Xylox coughed, dragging himself across the floor. He felt dizzy, and as he wiped his brow, he realized it was not sweat staining his hand. It was blood. He was bleeding. He looked up. The ceiling of his command chamber had partially collapsed. A bloody mess was all that remained of his commander. His eyes shifted toward the hologram. The base had been breached. The Tau were inside the fortress, slaughtering his guards. His attention turned to the massive walker still standing before the fortress, though it no longer aimed at the structure, apparently deeming it no longer a threat. Storm Surge. That was what the computer had identified it as. It was madness. The Tau, what kind of monsters were they? Or perhaps, more importantly, what kind of monsters they had faced that they felt the need to create such engine of war. He barely noticed the doors being kicked open, nor the heavy footsteps of the Tau breachers entering the chamber. He only turned slightly to face his executioners. They recognized him immediately. That much was clear. They approached cautiously, weapons raised, despite the fact he was wounded and unarmed. Oh, Shizor. Xylox fought with something close to pity. I think you underestimated what kind of monsters the Tau truly are before you struck a deal with them. He watched quietly, almost dispassionately, as one of the blocky pulse blasters was raised directly toward his head. I pray to the gods that you will be left with the bill. It was his final thought, before a spray of concentrated plasma erased his upper body from existence. I do not like this idea, student, Ashenblade said, shaking his head. It feels like a trap. I concur, Commander. Commissar Sereyegov nodded. This feels like a lure.
Lure or not, I must go after him.
True Strike declared.
We are the Vanguard. We're the closest to the target. I will take our elites and claim Ravax's head. He escaped me once. I will not allow him to do so again,
she said firmly. Ashenblade and Sereyegov exchanged glances. They knew that tone. True Strike had made up her mind. She was going after the Crimson Trandoshan, and neither of them would be able to stop her. Very well. Will there be any other changes to the plan? Ashenblade asked.
I do not believe so. Enemy resistance is far weaker than I predicted. Than any of us predicted.
She answered, though her thoughts were clearly elsewhere. Ashenblade wanted to say more, but the loud sigh from Sereyegov drew his attention. Quite. The former Imperial muttered, looking over the ruined trade hub where they had halted. These fools can barely be classified as PDF, even by Militarum standards. Torvak nodded in agreement. It was true. The Rune Defense Forces were not a real military, and they were not particularly skilled at defense either. Their lines had collapsed within minutes, and now Commonwealth forces flooded the city from every direction, encountering only scattered resistance.
We have identified several points of resistance. One of them is the Hot Palace, your target.
Koka stated firmly.
Ensure the path is cleared as quickly and efficiently as possible.
The Sava, her friendly drone, appeared near his mistress. I have received word that Aung Sun Ho herself will descend onto the battlefield, and, according to Commander Surstrike, she may head directly for Drogsam the Hut. Ashenblade nearly stumbled at the revelation. An ethereal joining the battle and choosing to confront the Hut personally. He turned towards Rayegov, whose expression had grown notably more serious. "She will not be pursuing Governor Kong?" he asked. "Negative. She wants the rebel leader to be the one to capture the governor," the Sava replied.
Regardless, Icewind has entered the field. There will be no escape,
Koka stated, grimly. Ashenblade felt his skin crawl at the mention of a living weapon. Even Seregov appeared uncomfortable at the mere thought of that living legend. He was certain they could all feel the oppressive, dreadful weight of their presence somewhere within the city. After a moment, the commissar nodded. "Then we shall have to double our efforts. It would be unfortunate to appear incompetent before Her Eminence," he remarked dryly. "Very well. We will continue our advance toward the palace. You will pursue Ravax, while Nomad leads the remainder of the contingent toward the spaceport." Ashenblade paused briefly, reminded that his son would be among those forces. "By the Tau Va, we shall be victorious." Koka nodded, making the sign of unstoppable destiny, before her hologram flickered out. Ashenblade sighed and turned toward the commissar. "The Spice Baron's palace," he said, more statement than a question. "The Spice Baron's palace," Seregov confirmed as he moved toward his chimera. "Let us make haste. If the Ethereal is to join us, we must prepare the path for her." Ashenblade nodded and headed towards his own devilfish, hoping the advance towards the palace would prove as simple as the initial assault. The great combat barge of Serantok Mercantile League moved into position directly above the capital city of this pitiful world. It slid smoothly between the Tau cruisers, taking an optimal firing position. It was easy, laughably so. No anti-orbital fire lanced upward from the surface to challenge them. No attack craft contested the void. It was exactly as he had been told it would be. A show of force for the powers of the Outer Rim. He did not mind. An easy battle meant minimal losses, and minimal losses were precisely what the Leagues needed right now. Cut off from the main holds, they had to preserve what remained and work tirelessly to establish a new center of power. And, most importantly, they had to ensure that the Thane of the Hearth's Fire promise evolved into a true ancestor core. It would not be easy, but it could be done. It had happened by accident in the distant past. It could be achieved intentionally now. Frankly, the primary reason the Leagues had joined this battle was to gain deeper insight into the technology of this galaxy, seeking a way to accelerate that process. Oathcarver shook his head, casting those thoughts aside. This was not the time for such matters. He had a battle to win. He was a Khal, and his Oath Band awaited his command. Ironkin and Clonekin alike stood ready, waiting for his word. He glanced toward Veloki, who responded with a small nod. Turning toward his warriors, Oath Carver rested his double-headed axe against the floor.
We're far from home.
He roared.
Far not only from the Merciless Core, but from a very galaxy. We are few, but we are mighty.
His troops answered with thunderous shouts.
This is a new galaxy. A galaxy full of milksops who know nothing about true war. Nothing of how to fight.
He grinned broadly.
We may not be able to teach them how to fight. They can certainly teach them how to die.
His booming laughter was joined by the roaring amusement of every warrior present.
To the pods! Let us show them the might of the kin!
As one, the warriors of the Deep Core marched into the massive drop pods, marked with the runes of their people, each fitted with colossal drills beneath their hulls. Oath Carver grinned as mechanical arms locked him into place. His eyes remained fixed on the holographic display showing the status of the salt pods. All pods green, ready for deployment.
Commence the hammer drop.
In a smooth cascade, 8 kin drop pods launched from the belly of a barge, plunging towards the surface of Rune upon blazing trails of fire. Their massive drills tore through the atmosphere, glowing white hot as they descended. Thorin smiled, unable to suppress the exhalation coursing through him as the pod trembled violently around him. He could almost picture it. The confusion, the fear, the terror of his foes as burning meteors descended from the orbiting fleet, crashing straight into their city. His eyes tracked the tactical display. Enemy forces were gathering within one of the courtyards, undoubtedly preparing for a counterattack. Fools! They had no idea that every movement they made was being tracked by Tau drones, and that plans to shatter them were already in motion. He and his host would descend directly into the midst of one of those rally points within seconds.
For kin and profit!
Thorin roared, and his war cry was echoed by dozens of voices, some of flesh, others of metal. The defenders of Rune never realized what struck them. One moment they were regrouping within one of the city parks. Infantry, armored vehicles, and tanks split into strike groups intended to challenge the enemy's advance into the capital. Morale was shaky, but the sight of proper coordination and the arrival of elite mercenaries among the ranks had restored some measure of confidence. Then, the Hell Hammers struck the ground. The impact created shockwaves that hurled dozens of troopers to the ground, screaming in pain and terror. One of the pods smashed directly into AAT, crushing the tank and its crew beneath its immense weight. As soon the soldiers struggled to recover from both the impact and the shockwave, the hatches of the drop pods blasted open, and a host of heavily armored kin charged forth, Thorin leading the assault. He swung his Darkstar axe into a terrified militiaman, cleaving him in half. Raising his plasma pistol, he fired into a unit of droids, each shot reducing another machine into molten scrap.
Cut them down!
He roared as he charged into the midst of the enemy. And as his host followed, they encountered almost no meaningful resistance. Among their foes, only a handful of mercenaries possessed any training in melee combat, or weapons suited for close-quarter fighting. Yet vibroblades proved no obstacle to the weapons of the kin, which sliced effortlessly through both the vibrating swords and their wielders alike. The rest of the defenders simply shattered beneath the hammer blow of a kin assault. They had no idea how to fight in close combat, and so the Serantok elites butchered them with brutal efficiency. As if that was not enough, more Tau dropships descended into the battle, deploying fire warriors and crisis suits directly into the fray. Whatever pitiful resistance still remained finally collapsed, and Thorin sneered at the sight of a fleeing enemy.
Coward!
He spat to the side.
No fighting spirit!
He stepped through the entrails of a Trandoshan who had tried to attack him with his claws, only to be split vertically into two halves.
Move up, kindred! Do not let them regroup! We have a city to capture!
Can you stop giggling? Dane shouted in pure frustration.
I can't!
Lina shouted back.
The great Dane Marek, witch hunter, stormtrooper, outmatched by a bunch of toasters on legs!
She wasn't sure whether it was stress, fear, or the actual hilarity of a situation that had sent her into uncontrollable giggles, but at this point, she simply couldn't stop. They were stuck behind cover as crimson bolts flew overhead. They had been pinned down for quite a while now. None of the guns they carried could punch through Droideka's shields, and every grenade thrown in their direction was either blasted out of the air by the linky IG droids or detonated harmlessly against the shields. Sure, they had a few decent heavy weapons, but there wasn't a single madman among them willing to lean out of cover just to be blasted apart on a slim chance of landing a shot that might not even work. They were pinned. That was the reality of it. No way around, no way back, and certainly no way forward. Insufferable brat! Dane cursed.
I learned from the best.
Lina shot back, still giggling. That actually earned a smile from the old veteran, one that vanished the moment another salvo hammered against his cover. Alright, so we are kinda in trouble, and I'm out of ideas, Dane admitted, looking around. I'm open to suggestions. Lina thought for a moment before reaching toward the droidekas with an open hand, trying to force her psychic powers into a new direction, to grab the deadly machines and crush them with the strength of her mind. The droidekas budged. No, they simply turned and opened fire on her cover. Lina screeched and dug deeper behind it. Did you just try to crush them? With your peanut brain? Dane asked, shaking his head. That's not how your powers manifest. He let out a loud sigh. All right. Since our local psyker hasn't suddenly developed telekinetic abilities, I'm open for more productive suggestions. The soldiers of the dynasty exchanged glances. One of the Vanguard cleared his throat. I think we need to call for reinforcements, boss, he said after a moment. Not great for my self-esteem, but it's better than getting blasted. The other soldiers nodded in agreement. Dane glanced at Lina, who gave him an apologetic nod. They had all wanted to be the first into the base, to prove they were at the top of the food chain, but clearly that was not their day. Dane cursed. Frack! Fine! Bloody fine! He reached for a vox and changed frequencies. Trios, you hear me? There was a moment of silence.
Statement. We hear you, Dane.
The three voices answered.
Do you require assistance?
Unfortunately, Dane replied. We are pinned at the main entrance. 6 droidecas and twice as many IG droids are guarding it. We don't have the armor or the firepower to challenge them. They are as formidable as you predicted, Archmagos, if not more. Another moment of silence followed.
Acknowledgement. Moving to your position. Interest. We shall join you shortly.
The voices of the Archmagos cut off, and Lina soon heard heavy mechanical footsteps, growing closer and closer. Dane grinned. "All right, people, get ready for one hell of a show." He glanced at Lina. "Observe and learn, girl. I might have decades of experience, but Trios..." He shook his head in amusement. "Just watch, kid." As if to confirm his words, the massive form of Archmagos emerged through the smoke and fire beside the building. They walked alone, with no Skitari escort nearby, just as they said over the comms. They had come personally to deal with the problem. It didn't take long for the droids to identify the new threat. They turned at Swan and opened fire on the towering figure, to absolutely no effect. A shimmering energy field materialized around the priest of the machine god, effortlessly absorbing the incoming shots. In fact, the massive tech priest held it in place and simply observed the enemy, allowing them to focus their entire barrage upon him. Yet, even under the concentrated storm of fire, Trios, Cognis, Cerberax did not appear even slightly troubled.
Statement. Your observations were correct, Dane. Enemy designation Droid Eka and enemy designation IG Droid are more formidable than the initial assessment.
Cerberax stated, one of his heads rotating a full 180 degrees to look directly at Dane.
Thank you. This will greatly improve our future calculations.
With almost contemptuous ease, the Archmagos aimed at the enemy with a massive plasma cannon and an advanced heavy arc rifle. The rifle fired first, unleashing a short burst at the IG droids. Each shot carried a devastating electrical charge that erupted into brilliant blue flashes upon impact, arcs of electricity jumping between targets and frying the droid's circuits in moments. It took only 2 seconds for every black armored machine to collapse to the ground. The heavy plasma cannon fired next. Only 4 shots. The first slammed directly between the 2 leftmost spheres, cracking them apart. The follow-up blast vaporized the now unshielded droidecas. Cerberax repeated the feat against the rightmost pair, annihilating them just as effortlessly. Only 2 droidecas remained, both desperately maintaining fire against the shimmering shield, protecting the Archmagos.
Statement. Effectiveness of arc weapons has been noted. Anti-droid stratagems updated. Strength of droideca energy shields noted. Elimination requirements updated.
They stepped closer to the 2 remaining droids.
Fascination. The energy shields on these units are impressive. We require a functioning example.
The Archmagos advanced until they towered over the remaining droidecas, which slowly backed away, repositioning themselves almost as if they were afraid. Mechadendrites and cybernetic tendrils burst from Cyberax's back, reaching toward one of the droids. The appendages slipped through the energy shield with eerie ease before sizing the machine itself. Within moments, the heavy blaster cannons were disabled, and the struggling droideca was lifted off the ground like an insect grasped by a curious child.
Statement. You, man of iron, continue to fight despite all evidence proving you are outmatched.
They turned towards the final droid, which had backed itself against the wall and continued firing desperately, its shots splashing harmlessly against the Archaeotech shield surrounding the Archmagos.
Amusement. We shall reveal to you how little you have accomplished.
Current shield integrity at 78% and rising.
In an act of pure mockery, Trios Cognis Cerebrax spread his arms wide, standing tall and utterly unbothered beneath the relentless barrage. A mechanical chuckle escaped their throats as they observed what could only be interpreted as the droid's desperation.
Shield integrity at 80% and rising.
They taunted. Lina watched the display of power in awe-struck fascination, only to notice that one of the damaged IG droids was still functional. Sparkling widely, it hurled itself at Trios. Lina reached for her whip, hoping to intercept the machine, but Cerberus simply swung their axe backward and cleaved the droid apart without even turning around.
Statement.
Enough!
Trios extended their massive power claw toward the last droideca. One finger reached forward. The energy field surrounding the claw sliced through their shield effortlessly. Then, with casual precision, the Archmagos dragged the finger downward, splitting the droid's head cleanly in two and reducing the once deadly machine into a heap of scrap. Trios Cognis Cerebrax turned back toward Dane and Lina, the captured droideca still struggling within their mechadendrites.
Gates secured.
Order. Maintain guard outside.
Explanation. Our Skitarii shall have the honor of clearing the fortress itself.
Dane let out a quiet sigh as he rose from behind cover. Understood, though, frankly, I don't think they will have much work to do, he remarked, glancing around. Lina did the same. The battle was clearly winding down. The chaos of combat was fading with every passing minute. I think that was the last ace they had up their sleeve. Dane stretched slightly. No, it's just a mop-up operation, and after that, he looked over the burning base. Scarif will officially be ours. Archmagos remained silent for a moment, as if calculating the validity of his statement.
Agreement. This appears to be an accurate assessment of the current situation.
Statement. Lady Captain will be pleased.
Yes. Dane nodded slowly. Yes, she will. The three of them stood in silence, gazing over the burning ruins of a pirate fortress, while the scent of ozone, blood, and scorched flesh filled the air. It smelled like victory. Kuri was running. He knew he should have been more careful, sticking to cover, maybe even trying to move quietly, but such things felt futile now. The enemy was everywhere. He saw the Commonwealth troops advancing through the streets, vehicles of alien design, soldiers in organized uniforms marching alongside monsters dressed in little more than rags. He had already avoided at least one rebel strike team stalking through the city and redirecting civilians towards safe zones. The air trembled with a roar of jet engines and the buzzing of those accursed insect wings. He was growing desperate. So far, he had failed to find a single friendly force that wasn't under fire, encircled, or being ripped apart. Anyone he could regroup with, though the deeper he moved into the city, the more convinced he became that staying low and alone was his best chance of survival. He glanced toward the volcano at the heart of the city. It was active, spewing smoke and fire into the sky, though in a controlled manner. Advanced countermeasures and security systems were doing their work, redirecting slow streams of lava into specialized channels that prevented the city from being consumed. Not that the city was in good condition anyway. The assault from every direction had already reduced many districts to ruins. Civilians, terrified and confused, were flooding the streets. Some rushed towards shelters, others fled aimlessly, and some toward the spaceport. That's it, the spaceport. One of the most important locations in the city, second only to the fortress itself. If any organized resistance or escape route of world still remained, it would be there. Determined, Curie prepared to dash toward the new piece of cover when someone suddenly stumbled into his hiding spot. He spun around, his rifle raised, but his finger froze before pulling the trigger. 4 frightened, dust-covered faces stared back at him with a mixture of hope and fear. A family. Parents and 2 children. The boy couldn't have been older than 13, while his sister looked perhaps 3 years older. You are Militia, right? The father asked, stepping forward cautiously. Curie hesitated before nodding. I am. Please, help us. We are trying to get to the spaceport. My brother has a ship. He said he'd wait for us, at least before the comms went dead. The man said, his voice trembling slightly. I'm sure there will be room for you too, if you help us get there. Curie hesitated again. There was his oath, his duty, his desire for revenge. And then there was reality. He could no longer lie to himself. The Commonwealth had already won this battle. The fighting still happening across the city was nothing more than a mop-up operation. And he had no intention of becoming another stain on the ground. He had to live. He had to survive. Survival meant he might still have a chance to fight another day. He nodded. Very well. Stay close and follow my lead. He peeked out from behind cover and scanned the street. Clear, he whispered as he vaulted over the crumbling wall. Stay close. Thankfully, they listened. Whether it was fear, determination, or pure instinct, the family stayed so close behind him they almost felt like a second shadow. They moved quickly despite the debris and chaos clogging the roads. One would think people would flee in vehicles, but panic and crossfire had turned most streets into impassable death traps, forcing civilians to abandon everything except the essentials as they searched for safety. Curie was about to round a corner when he heard a whistle. He turned to see a battered squad of militiamen accompanied by half a dozen civilians. He waved them over, and they hurried across the street while nervously glancing at the skies above. Private Scholl, 3rd Battalion. Their apparent leader introduced himself. Private Curie, 10th Battalion. Curie replied with a nod. 10th Battalion? Weren't you defending Marissa Way into the city? Scholl asked. We were crushed within minutes. What about the 3rd Battalion? You were supposed to be in the reserve. stationed at the Star Park. The bastards hit us hard less than 10 minutes ago, Shoal answered grimly. Assault pods deployed straight from orbit. Smashed right into our formation just as we were preparing to counterattack. Me and the lads managed to escape, picked up those civvies on our way to spaceport. Shoal explained. We are hoping to get there, find some kind of transport and hopefully escape. Same, Curie nodded. I'm escorting this family. They say they have transport. He added, turning to them with a questioning look. The father looked hesitant, but once glanced at his fellow countrymen was enough for him to answer. It might be cramped, but we should all fit, he said. Cramped is better than dead, Shoal answered bitterly, shaking his head. Damn it all. How did it come to this? He cut himself off as a loud buzzing shook the roof of a ruin. Everyone pressed themselves against the walls, fingers tightening on triggers, silent as mice. The buzzing intensified, and then the roof trembled as dust rained from the ceiling. One of the Vespid had landed on the roof, above them. One of the children almost whimpered, but the mother's hands clamped over their mouth as they all held their breath. More stops, more dust. 5 of them. Curie and Shoal exchanged looks. Shoal gestured toward one of his grenades, but Curie shook his head and made a silencing motion. Combat couldn't be the first answer. A blaster shot blew a hole in a wall near his head. Curie dropped instantly, stifling a cry of surprise as the Vespid above them let out an enraged screech. Someone was firing at them, drawing their attention. Judging by the agonizing alien scream, they might have even killed one. There were still 4 of them, though. The ceiling shook, and the sounds of the firefight reached them through the wall. Curie rose carefully and looked through the hole in the wall. The sight that greeted him was horrifying. A squad of militiamen was being torn apart by the Vespid. Quite literally. One soldier was grabbed and lifted into the air, only to be impaled by a massive stinger. The man didn't even scream before the hateful insect hurled him like a projectile into another soldier, sending both crashing to the ground. Another was screaming, clutching the ruined bloody stump where his arm used to be. The rest were being butchered by massive Vespid claws that sliced through armor like a hot knives through butter. It took only moments for all the militiamen to fall dead. The Vespid, only 3 of them now, screeched angrily at the corpses before taking to the sky and flying away. Curie let out a shaky breath. Alright, we are gone. We need to move. One of the soldiers bent over and vomited. Several civilians followed suit. Shoal was trembling, both with fear and anger. How can they serve alongside these monsters? He asked in disbelief. Curie didn't have an answer. For all the Tau talk about civilization and progress in the media, they served alongside truly savage creatures. Not the time or place to ask those questions, Curie declared. We need to go, now. The longer we stay here, the greater the chance they will find us. Shoal nodded and got back to his feet. You're right. Come on, people, up. We need to get to the spaceport, now, he commanded. The promise of safety pushed everyone back to their feet, and they quickly left the building, rushing through the streets toward their hoped-for escape. Yet as they drew closer, it became clear that the situation was dire. The enemy knew the spaceport was important, and the fighting there was the fiercest yet. As they approached, they saw more and more pockets of resistance, as well as increasing number of Tau battlesuits. Curie kicked open the doors of one of the buildings and rushed inside, the rest of the survivors following close behind. They were all exhausted, utterly exhausted, but so close to salvation they could almost taste it. Curie looked out of the window and smiled at the sight. The droids were counterattacking. Through rubble, smoke and fire, a unit of battle droids pushed out of a spaceport. AAT led the advance, firing all the while. A spider droid perched itself atop a ruined structure and unleashed fire upon the enemy. Then, suddenly, an explosion. The AAT was torn to shreds, and the spider droid blew apart. A pair of crisis suits landed amidst the advancing machines and ripped them to pieces with burst cannons and missiles alike. Curie cursed as he slid behind cover. "We are cut off!" He spat through gritted teeth. "We need another way! Out! Out of the way we came!" They moved quickly, none of them willing to test their luck against crisis suits. Curie was the last to exit, and as he did, he froze. A squad of fire warriors was waiting for them, rifles raised. A devilfish hovered slightly behind and above them, its massive burst cannon aimed directly at the group. They stood there, paralyzed by fear, shock and despair. They had been so damn close, and here, their desperate run came to an end. Curie breathed heavily, seeing red, ready to raise his rifle and go down fighting, when one of the Tau, far larger than his compatriots, spoke. "You protected civilians." His voice came distorted through his helmet and the simple translator. "Admirable. Surrender. We will treat you fairly." Curie wanted to curse them, to shout, to fight, but he also wanted to survive. Scholl dropped his weapon and raised his hands into the air, his face twisted into an expression of bitter surrender. His comrades followed suit. Curie was the last one still holding a weapon, though he never raised it. The giant Tau stepped closer, his bulky rifle pointed toward the ground. His posture was relaxed, almost reassuring. Curie breathed hard as he glared at the unmoving, emotionless visor of a fire warrior, and then slowly dropped his weapon and raised his hands. The giant Tau gave him a small nod, almost as if in appreciation, as if that was worth anything to Curie now. He had survived, only to face the consequences of doing so. Strong Strike let out a quiet breath as the prisoners were escorted out of the danger zone. "Nice work on the de-escalation," Dom Era praised. "Ever thought about going into security or law enforcement?" Reka laughed. "No, not my way of doing things, ma'am," he answered, lifting his ion rifle. "I prefer doing things the hard way." "And making things more difficult for the rest of us," Veldenet joked as she jumped inside the devilfish. Strong Strike followed, the hatch closing behind the Shasui, who was the last one in. "All right, warriors," Eraka said loudly, a bloodied bandage wrapped around his head. "The liberation is going well, but the spaceport still stands. We need to secure it. Expect desperate resistance and a lot of civilians. It seems the collapse of enemy's defenses prompted many citizens to attempt to flee the city aboard private spacecraft, so watch your fire." Still hard to imagine. Oshivesa muttered, shaking her head. Private spacecraft. This is a different galaxy, Sakurai said while checking his rail rifle. There are many new things here. And yet young warriors are as chatty as always. Tan Shas chided with a shake of her head. Focus. We are entering the engagement zone. Prepare for hot drop. The devilfish made a sharp turn, and they all heard the burst cannon open fire. Barricades! The driver's voice called over the speakers. Lots of infantry. They felt the transport dodge sharply to the side, followed by the sound of an explosion behind them. Heavy weapons! I will get you close to cover. Prepare for hot deployment. The squad readied itself as the devilfish charged through the incoming fire, weaving left and right, while the burst cannon and gun drones kept at a steady stream of fire. The light inside the transport flashed gold, and the doors opened. Strong Strike and his squad jumped out directly into a hailstorm of crimson bolts. Xun Jida cursed as a blaster shot grazed his shoulder, but aside from that, everyone managed to reach cover. They were on a wide street, neon signs glowing brightly through the dust and smoke. The defenders had erected barricades along the route to the spaceport, built from rubble, wreckage, and damaged civilian vehicles. They fired desperately at the attackers, crimson bolts splashing against walls and the armor of a devilfish. Strong Strike leaned out of cover and fired at one of the barricades. The ion rifle blasted a hole straight through a civilian craft, and the militiaman hiding behind it. A storm of blaster fire answered immediately, forcing him back behind cover. Another missile streaked from the barricades, and this time it struck true. The devilfish left engine detonated, tearing open the side of the craft. Yet, despite the damage, the transport remained operational. Critical damage sustained? Commencing retreat. The driver's voice announced as the devilfish limped away, sliding sideways while one engine struggled to compensate for the loss of the other. That's not great. Oshivesa muttered as she ducked behind cover, her rail rifle cooling after a shot. We needed that burst cannon. We will need more than that! Tan Shas cursed as she peered through her scope down the street. Tanks! Reka peeked from behind cover and growled in frustration. Unfortunately, the Shasui was right. A handful of AAT tanks were pushing out of the spaceport, accompanied by both militia and droid infantry. One of the tanks fired, and the Pathfinders dropped to the ground as the shells screamed right above their heads. We don't have the firepower to take them on! Veldenet shouted. We need to pull back! Negative on that, Shasla. Ghost Strike stated firmly, his rank and aura of leadership allowing no argument. Reinforcements are en route. We just need to hold long enough. Another tank fired, the shell detonating directly in front of the barricades this time. Reka cursed as part of the cover collapsed on top of him. He pushed the rubble aside, ignoring the dust covering his armor. He leaned out, overcharging his ion rifle, and fired at one of the tanks. He might as well have been throwing rocks. The shot splashed harmlessly against the thick frontal armor. He cursed again as more shots smashed into the barricades, forcing him back into cover. I don't have angle, he shouted. Neither do I, Sakurai added. Shasui, we can't damage them this way. We don't need to damage them, Shasla, Araka shouted back. We just need to keep their attention on us. A tank shell smashed into one of the barricades. Dom-Era, Esksa, and Zunjida screamed in pain as they were hurled backward into the street. Reka checked his HUD and breathed a sigh of relief. They were wounded, some badly, but they would live. That was assuming something stopped those damn tanks from firing again. He was about to voice that thought when a shockwave slammed into him from behind, followed by a deafening crack. One of the AATs detonated in a brilliant flash of crimson fire, its turret launched high into the air, trailing smoke before smashing through the roof of a nearby building. Rekka turned around and smiled at the sight. A hammerhead, one of the Commonwealth's tank killers, hovered in the middle of the street, several blocks behind them, its proud rail cannon still crackling with energy after the shot. The remaining tanks immediately opened fire on the new target and far greater threat. More tanks rolled out from the side streets, aiding their guns to the bombardment. In response, the hammerhead activated its disruption pods. Rekka grinned as the image of a Tau tank blurred, doubled, tripled, and then quadrupled. The overlapping images danced like fragments of a shattered mirror, reality itself seeming to break apart as the hammerhead dodged incoming fire and answered with another precise shot, destroying a second AAT. Despite their losses, the enemy didn't seem discouraged. If anything, they pushed harder. Infantry formed around the tanks, advancing alongside them. "Bloody bastards!" Zunjida yelled, firing his carbine on full auto. Rekka turned to see his comrade, face twisted by hatred and scar tissue, dragging Esksa behind cover with one hand. Dom Era crawled beside them, her broken iron rifle discarded, blood trailing behind her from a nasty shrapnel wound in her left leg. "Cover them!" the squad leader shouted, leaning out and firing his carbine. Everyone joined him, unleashing a barrage of pulse, iron and rail rifle fire into the advancing enemy. Many shots struck true, but still, the enemy kept coming. Rekka feared this was it, the moment he would die, right at the beginning of his path as a warrior, in his very first battle on enemy soil. Then he heard jet engines. A barrage of plasma and missiles rained from the sky directly into the advancing troops. Rekka barely restrained a shout of elation as crisis suits descended upon the enemy, guns blazing. The militia and droids tried to fight back. Missiles streaked upward, and blaster fire filled the air, but all of it became irrelevant as a new, far larger shape entered the fray. A riptide. Shots slammed against its shield, but it held firm. The massive ion cannon hummed and fired, erasing one of the AATs from existence. And, as if that wasn't enough, a deafening roar shook the air. Rekka turned just in time to see a full frontal charge of Tarelian and Kroot warriors. The massive aliens leapt over barriers, roaring and screeching their war cries as they slammed into the enemy. They swept past his squad position and crashed into the faltering defenders, who shattered beneath the assault of Tarelian maces and Kroot blades. "Squad, to me!" Eraka roared. "Regroup, patch your wounds, and prepare to join the assault." Rekka nodded and hurried over to the rest of his squad, kneeling beside Zunjida and helping Veldened administer first aid. The battle was far from over, and they would need to be in fighting condition to survive its end. "Killer!" Kira pulled her friend behind cover. The Trandoshan hissed in pain as he slid to the floor, looking down at the gory stump where his right arm had been.
Frack!
He cursed.
That was my favorite arm.
Kira leaned out of cover and fired the underslung grenade launcher down the hall. She ducked back just before the brilliant flash of the photon grenade reached her position. The guards screamed in pain, many stumbling out of cover, only to be cut down by Kira and her strike team. She looked back at Kilor, who was being tended by Paloma. He will live, the Blood Twi'lek reassured her. Go, I will take care of the wounded. Kira glanced at her friend and the other injured fighters, including Lancer 4, who was cursing her bad luck with a sizable piece of shrapnel lodged in her eye and several more wounds scattered across her body. Kira had no idea how she could still curse with such ferocity despite her injuries, but she had to be fine since the rest of her team didn't seem concerned.
Yes. Go, Kira.
Kelor groaned.
My arm will grow back, but we can't let these bastards get away.
Agreed. Enduring Spirit said with a sharp nod. We cannot allow Kong to escape. Kira looked around the command center, and her fury rose higher than the atmosphere itself. They had fought and bled to get all the way here, only to find the command center abandoned, save for a few droids and pre-recorded messages repeating on loop. Kong and the rest of his command staff had fled before they arrived. Thankfully, in their panic, or their desire to escape as quickly as possible, they had failed to disable the internal security systems. And so, Kira knew exactly where they were headed. A hidden hangar not far from their current position. But with a number of guards in their way, reaching it would not be easy. She gritted her teeth, her expression of absolute hatred hidden behind her helmet. With a roar, she stepped out of cover and fired the underslung launcher again, this time loaded with an explosive grenade. It blew a Trandoshan and several B1s into a mix of gore and scrap, forcing the remaining guards behind cover. Follow me! She roared and charged. Those still able to fight followed close behind, firing all the while. Some of the guards put up admirable resistance, but they were few in number. News of Kong and his allies making a run for it had already spread like wildfire through the fortress, and she was certain the commanders on the ground would learn of it soon enough. The Battle of Rune was as good as over. The militia would not continue resisting once they realized their leadership had abandoned them. The Tau would win. Rune would be liberated. But that didn't matter, because Kong could not be allowed to escape. He could not be given a chance to flee to the Republic, strike deals, or force his way back into power. She blew holes in the guards blocking her path and continued her relentless advance. No, she would not allow it. Kong would not escape her. Fueled by a hatred and determination that had sustained her for a decade, she smashed through every obstacle with unstoppable fury. Guards and droids alike fell before her as if killed by the sheer force of her will. Her launcher sang once more, and the doors ahead were blown wide open. And there he was, beside Kong, Silver Korad, the man and woman who had abused Rune and its people for a decade, draining its wealth, living in luxury, while the people beneath them suffered in poverty or chains. She saw it then, the fear in the governor's eyes as he turned to face her. His ridiculous military uniform, one he had never earned, flapped widely in the wind. His red hair was disheveled, his steps unsteady. "Kong!" she roared, opening fire. Her shots flew from the barrel of her carbine and streaked true toward the fleeing oppressors, only to splash harmlessly against the massive blast door that slammed down from above. She screamed in fury, continuing to fire and even launching 2 grenades, but the emergency hatch did not budge. "Blast it!" she snarled, looking around widely. "Is there another way in?" Negative. "This is the only entrance." Enduring Spirit answered, "Move aside, we will create a new door." The Commonwealth commandos moved forward, pulling out some kind of adhesive explosive material and placing it against the hatch in a carefully measured square. Kira watched, grinding her teeth and praying to every god willing to listen that they would be fast enough. Kong breathed heavily, looking down. The beautiful Twi'lek, more trophy than secretary, lay dead on the floor in a pool of her own blood. One bolt. One single bolt from that carbine had managed to slip through before the hatch sealed shut, and it killed her instantly. She lay there unmoving, the pool of blood steadily spreading around her. He ground his teeth in hatred, glancing back at the sealed hatch. His planet, his army, his kingdom, and now his trophy? What else were the Tau and Kira Sol going to steal from him? A hand landed on his shoulder. "Bisat, we need to go, now!" Korad insisted. Kong shrugged him off. Silvar Korad, his marshal, a useless fool. He had promised the defenses would hold. He had promised the city could endure. And yet, here they were, running, fleeing, abandoning Rune itself in the hope of finding enough support to reclaim the planet later. Rune would be his again. Kong had no doubt about that. But Korad and the rest of the incompetents, they would not live long enough to enjoy it. Hiding his true feelings, he nodded.
Right!
He turned toward his private yacht.
Let's go!
The hidden hangar within the fortress was not large, just big enough to house his personal yacht and a trio of modified A6 interceptors. It was not much, but alongside the 24 vulture droids hidden in auxiliary hangars, it should be enough to punch through the Commonwealth blockade and escape the system. The hangar doors were already opening. Soon, they would be airborne. Though, truthfully, he still did not know where he would run. The Tau were certainly no friends of the Hutts. Maybe Jabba would offer assistance. He looked down at the data disk in his hand. Every scrap of information collected during the battle. Every detail the capital's extensive surveillance network had managed to capture. A treasure worth a fortune to any future enemy of the Tau.
The Hutts will help us,
He said as he approached the yacht ramp.
as with the corporations. Even the Republic will bow if it means getting a glimpse at this data.
A vicious smile crept across his face as he turned toward Korad.
Rune will be ours again soon.
Korad smiled and opened his mouth to answer. Then something shimmered behind him. A massive shape. The outline of a monster only partially visible, accompanied by a blue light and a wave of heat. Before Kong could comprehend what was happening, the ghost fired. The shot slammed directly into his yacht, blowing it apart in a thunderous explosion. Kong screamed as a piece of shrapnel struck him directly in the right eye. He stumbled back and collapsed to the floor, his remaining eye widening in horror. Korat spun toward the apparition, raising a pistol as if such a tiny weapon could possibly matter. The ghost, slowly becoming more solid and real, raised its hand and struck downward with terrifying force. The Marshal of Rune vanished beneath the blow, transformed into a gory smear across the floor. His guards reacted immediately, opening fire. The shots splashed harmlessly against the white armor of a giant cyclops that continued materializing before them. A ghost kill. One of the monsters that had infiltrated his city. It raised its main cannon and fired, targeting the interceptors meant to escort him to safety. None of them even had the chance to lift off before they were obliterated. Then the monster turned its attention to the remaining guards. Fusion blasters mounted on its shoulders opened fire, melting flesh, bone and metal alike with each blast, leaving behind corpses engulfed in blue flame. Kong crawled desperately through the gore, rubble and fire, searching for any possible escape. There was none. He saw the crimson glow spreading across the hangar hatch. Kira Sol and her rebels were breaking through. He felt the ground tremble as the ghost kill approached. Turning slowly, Kong stared up with his remaining eye, terror consuming him as the cyclopean machine leaned down to look directly at him with its single azure optic. His voice trembled.
Who? What are you?
Kong cried, unable to look away from the monster. Behind him came the sound of an explosion. Footsteps followed as the invaders entered the hangar. Even those footsteps slowed as the newcomers witnessed the terrible majesty of the Cyclops and the carnage it had wrought. The ghost kill remained silent for a moment, as though savoring the terror filling the air. Finally, it spoke, and though the voice belonged to a living being, Kong could not believe that whatever dwelled within the suit was any less a machine than the ghost kill itself.
I have many titles. My people named me Icewind. The orcs dubbed me Invisigates. The Imperials titled me the Silent Storm. The Eldar proclaimed me the Hidden Blade. I care little for such names. I am Okais, student of Purotide, master of Monat, and I will now accept your unconditional surrender.
Koka rushed through the streets of Town Tomb, the jet engines of her crisis suit roaring. Her personal guards, elite warriors, all equipped with crisis suits, followed close behind. A dozen of them in total. They flew in formation, keeping to the rooftops as they leapt from one building to another, mostly ignoring the disorganized defenders below. She listened to the battlefield reports with only half an ear. Her mind was focused on a single target. The monster she intended to slay. And then, as she landed atop the factory building, she saw him. The Crimson Demon, unleashing hellish fire from its massive claws as it advanced toward the bridge, spying one of the great canals used to redirect the lava flows. Hatred twisted her face as she watched Rancor crush a crisis suit beneath its feet, unleashing a maniacal roar mixed with the cruel laughter of its pilot.
Ravax.
Koka spoke the name like a curse.
I'm coming for you.
Fueled by righteous fury, she and all her bodyguards leaped from the roof to face the crimson monster. And that was episode 19, part 2, my darlings. I hope you enjoyed this rather long episode, filled with brutal combat and exciting end to the Bisat Kong's position of a governor. As you probably have noticed, I called upon quite a few people to voice characters in this episode, including several people who take part in the Hunt for the Enorat Star Wars role-playing campaign, run by my good friend Artificial Dragon, host of Can Mayonnaise Kill the Jedi podcast. Luffy, also known as Tia Boba, returned as Commander True Strike and Lina Voss. Seth Lincoln once more voiced the intimidating Arch-Magos, Trios Cognis Cerberax. Gordon 519 once more voiced Foreign Oath Carver, providing the accent I adore. Royd Travis, who plays the role of Sarzel, a Jedi survivor in the Hunt for the Enorat, voiced no other but the dictator himself, Bisat Kong. Dr. Amboss did similar thing to Roy Travis by totally switching what type of character he voiced. As in campaign, he plays the absolute bastard of a politician, Sir Morin, but this time he decided to voice none other than Okais, the living weapon. I also cannot forget about the artists who created the magnificent art that makes this series so great. Hayden Lumpkin, Cubic Curator, 3D Vincents, Xavi, Real Mech Islov, Blue Banderhate, Makawi, and with special thanks to BD1106, who created several amazing SFM and fun animations for the series. Indeed, the animation you saw wasn't commissioned. It's an example of the fan art created by a member of the community. I was truly stunned when I saw it first. A fun animation, sure, a short one, but hey, animation! Not something I had on my bingo card, I can't tell you that much. Artificial Dragon himself has gifted me this amazing art created by Necrocephalopod, a Twi'lek Tau auxiliary, as sexy as they are dangerous. I'm sure this will prove useful in the future of the series. This is something I hoped my series would inspire, and of course I welcome all types of fan art you might have for me. If it will be possible, those pieces might even become an official part of a series. On the same note, thank you to all who decided to donate to the art budget on Ko-fi. Thanks to you, we reached the basic goal of $220 to commission few art pieces for Season 2. Something was commissioned already. But remember, the more money is gathered in the budget, the more art can be commissioned. Remember, it's thanks to your donations this series has a truly stunning art gallery. This series would have lost much of its charm without your donations. You can also support the channel through the merch store. Hayden Lumpkin recently created a really cute and legally distinct character, Stillwave, of a Dao dynasty. You can buy stickers or t-shirt with this very nice looking Oni girl. If you want to support me directly, join my Patreon. The $3 tier gets you early access to videos, and $7 tier gets you early access to the scripts. The $1 tier gets you early viewing of some art pieces, as well as the ability to vote on future videos. I didn't utilize that in quite some time, but after Season 1 will come to a close, you can expect I will spend at least a month making smaller videos, so you will get a chance to send both requests and vote on the ideas. The highest $10 tier gets to be mentioned by the end of each video. Speaking of which, big thanks to my highest tier supporters: Michael Pellison, Josh Travis, Cell, Sab, Rizda9, Saragusta, Boromir117, and Heimko. Thank you all for your support. Next thing on the list, Q&A. As always, one question per person. Place Q&A on top of a comment and ask whatever you like. I will try to answer as many fun questions as I can. But do remember, I have limited time in the day, so I won't answer questions that were already answered. If answering your question will take too much time, if it's too disconnected from the series, or just not interesting for me to answer. In other words, it's a coin flip. Pray to Lady Fortune that she shall smile upon thee. But I think that's it for today. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you enjoyed. Now, my dear viewers and listeners, remember, wherever you are, whatever you do, try to enjoy yourself while you can. I wish you most heretical day. Ta-ta!